I'm not that excited for these NBA finals. I like superstars in the NBA finals, and we don't really have that. I'm gonna bash Adam Silver here. You're the reason we got this.
Like,
Takes like this is why NBA ratings is going down because people like him that are fortunate to have a platform, a big enough platform, are the wrong people to be on those platforms giving their opinion on a game like the NBA. I want to show you something. You know, got to talk a little bit about this. Um, so you and me, we love the game. We're gonna watch the game regardless. But we still there's still the reality of the situation and the ratings thing where it wasn't the greatest for the NBA. 8.91 million viewers, which is the lowest
really?
and least watched finals opener since it says Nielsen was tracking it, which was in 1988. So
Dang.
and it excluded COVID, which was 2020 and 2021 series, and those series were pretty low. So minus the COVID time, this is the lowest. So I have a lot to say about this. It has nothing to do with the product on the court,
I
but
agree.
the media's the media being the biggest culprit of why the NBA ratings have gone down. When you look at Fox Sports 1, when you look at ESPN, when you look at TNT, how they have single handedly shitted on the game that they're covering, I think that has a lot to do with the ratings problem. People want to point to foul baiting and too many 3-point shots. I think a lot of the narrative has to do with who is covering the sport, what they're saying. For crying out loud, Doris Burke was on live TV saying Shea Gilgis is a free throw merchant. Like on live TV, these are Twitter narratives, and she brought it on television. This is the stuff that really just
Turns people
as
away from the sport.
casuals turning off the game and not wanting to watch it. So, what is your thoughts on the low ratings for game one?
Oh man, I got a plethora of things. All right, so first, to piggyback off your point about the media, yes, they do play a major role in this, I guess, like toxic narrative around the players and how. Here's the thing. I saw a TikTok the other day explaining why the NBA will probably never be on the level of popularity and scale as a soccer or you call football in
Mm-hmm,
the NFL. And it's because in these sports, they build up these players
mm-hmm,
and almost make them to like put them on a legendary or mythical level. While the NBA does their hardest, NBA media does their hardest to knock these players down a peg, try to get them on a level where the fans can see them nearly as equal. That's you not. These are NBA athletes, professional, best players in the freaking world. There's no way that NBA the fans should be as comfortable with disrespecting them the way they do and acting like they could go out there and do whatever they do. Like you look at the presentation of the
mm-hmm.
game. I think this really is a big point as well, point of contention. I'm gonna ask you this first. Did that game feel like a finals game? Like if you just
Absolutely
turned on
not.
TV, would you know that this was the NBA finals?
No, absolutely not. Because there was no finals logo. There was
Mm.
no like. There was
No,
nothing there.
no finals logos. A bunch of YouTube TV. We didn't even get to see the intros pregame. They didn't build up. It was no monologue from the commentators or nothing. Lead building up how significant of a moment this is the biggest accomplished, biggest stage in the sport, and it felt like a Tuesday game on ESPN.
Yeah, it did.
And you mean to
Mm.
tell me they say, oh, we're not gonna put the big finals trophy on the court because players said it was slippery. But
Oh,
you can paint
let
a
me show
floor for
you. Hold
every
on.
32, for every 30 teams for the in season tournament, but the last games in the series, like last games of the season, you can't paint a finals court for the two participants. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Like this is what I'm talking about. The priorities is messed up. The priorities messed up from the league. And it's just ridiculous. Look how much yo, this is such iconic stuff right here. We haven't had this type of atmosphere in the field in forever. And this is the NBA part. The priorities messed up from the networks. I pray and I'm praying NBC restores the feeling. They said they're gonna bring back the player intros pregame. Thank you. And hopefully they somehow find a way to get some type of insignia of the finals on the court or something, because the game has been lacking presentation for a very long time. Ever since ESPN and TNT became the main two channels for networks for basketball, the presentation has gone down drastically, and
Mm-hmm.
it is bad for the sport. Because if a casual, you ain't watch basketball for all this year, you turn the game on, you think it was just a regular game. You wouldn't think it was the NBA Finals. It's just
Yes.
like it's ridiculous.
Unfortunately, I think ESPN
They're going to
owns the
rename the
rights
finals.
for the NBA Finals, which sucks because, as we've seen for the past 5 years, it has drastically gone down. Getting rid of Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson has stunted the coverage. But ultimately, it's not even just that; it's the presentation, like you mentioned. But I don't think that's the biggest. I don't think that's the number one reason why. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to build up the game. You notice that stuff when you're watching the game. It's the build up to the game. And I think ultimately that comes down to how you cover these teams throughout the entire season. Because yeah, we see the Knicks versus Pacers series, we see Thunder versus Nuggets, we see Thunder versus Timberwolves, but throughout the season, it's the casual fans. Do they know these teams? Do they care about these teams? Will they watch these teams? You know what this series is in football? In a football analogy, this is the Rams versus the Bengals, pretty much. Rams and Bengals, both really good teams, both teams that have explosive offenses, both teams that have players that have done really well during that year. Cooper Kupp, he was an amazing that year. I think he won the Triple Crown, right? He had the
Yeah,
most yards,
the
most
the, the,
touchdowns,
the
most
year they
receptions.
won the Super Bowl 21, I believe.
21. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then Matthew Stafford, an amazing player as well. Obviously, top 6 QB in the league that year. I think he may have top 3 in passing yards that year. I think he was top 5 in touchdowns. He had an amazing season, and they won the Super Bowl. And then obviously you had Bengals, you had Joe Burrow. He had a phenomenal season. Nobody thought they were going to make the Super Bowl. Jamar Chase, yada yada yada. Same with Indiana Pacers. So that's the comparison I have. But even though they didn't have Patrick Mahomes, they didn't have Tom Brady, they didn't have Aaron Rodgers, they still did good. People were still excited. It was celebrated. The coverage was great because they built up these teams throughout the season. And with the NBA, a lot of times they focus on 4 or 5 teams, and everybody else gets pushed to the side. And you can't do that because when the NBA finals come about and you have the teams that weren't covered a lot throughout the season, people aren't going to care because you didn't talk about them that much.
True.
I saw a clip where JJ Redick was talking about the Indiana Pacers and how they're not being talked about a whole lot, but they're a great team. This was like months ago during the regular season after the Lakers faced the Pacers. They effectively came out of nowhere because not a lot of people were talking about them. Not a lot of NBA analysts were talking about them. The only people that were talking about them were the experts. But guess what? They're not on the nationally acclaimed national TV shows like a Tim Legler. Tim Legler, if you put Tim Legler on First Take, on Get Up a lot more, you would get a lot more coverage on Indiana. But because he's not on these shows, he's not invited to these shows a lot, you're not going to hear a lot of coverage about Indiana because he was talking about Indiana. I remember I was listening to the NBA radio, and I think it was a Saturday, and this group of guys, they do NBA radio, invited Tim Legler on there. I think it was around February or March, and he mentioned the Indiana Pacers. He was like, "Don't sleep on the Indiana Pacers. Indiana Pacers are a really, really good team, and nobody wants to face the Indiana Pacers." But when you look at the Get Up, when you look at First Take, when you look at Fox Sports 1, all these shows, They weren't talking about Indiana at all until
Nope.
it was too late. So this is a problem. This is a problem. It's not just about, the NBA Finals is here and we got to talk about these teams. It's about what are you doing during the regular season to build up these teams? And that has really hurt the overall product. That has really hurt the ratings for the NBA because these casual fans don't care. They don't care about these teams because they never talk about them. And that's why the
And when
ratings
they
are where they
do, it's in the negative context. They ain't hear. I ain't heard a peep about the Pacers all year until that list about who the players voted as the most overrated in the league, and Tyrese Halliburton was on it.
are.
But
Right.
before then, it was crickets.
So look at this. So somebody like this, Jason McIntyre. I'm not excited that I'm not that excited for these NBA finals. I like superstars in the NBA finals, and we don't really have that. I'm gonna bash Adam Silver here. You're the reason we got this.
Like,
Take like this is why NBA ratings is going down because people like him that are fortunate to have a platform, a big enough platform, are the wrong people to be on those platforms giving their opinion on a game like the NBA. There should be people that are experts that actually love the game, that actually are passionate about the game, giving their opinions on the sport. Not somebody like Jason McIntyre who claims he's a diehard basketball fan, when in reality he's a casual who is doing lazy reporting, wants to do lazy reporting on the game, which is like the same old lazy narratives about LeBron's legacy, Steph's legacy. That's why a lot of these media people are praying that Steph or LeBron get into the NBA Finals because they don't have to do a whole lot of research. They don't have to do a whole lot of analysis on the teams because they could just lean on the same old narratives that we've been talking about for years on years. He is part of the problem. Nick Wright as well is part of the problem because he also bashed the NBA Finals matchup. These are the people on national television programs. Why are the Morris twins? Why am I seeing the Morris twins on Get Up and First Take after an amazing game, an amazing finish? I don't want to see the Morris twins. I don't care that they're former players. One is currently playing in the game. I don't care. They don't talk about the game in a way that is going to effectively help market it. Instead, they sound like casuals talking about the game.
I think this influx of players getting into the media space is going to backfire tremendously because they don't have an ounce of journalism in their bone. They don't know how to build up anything. They just know how to speak matter of factly about stuff just because they say, "Oh, I played in the league, so I get to say whatever." I'm like, you sound crazy. Like
You do.
like with Gilbert Arena. I know that's his self-owned media, but still, he's still media. Gilbert Arena said about Karl Anthony Towns, like no, like we need to start putting real journalists back in these positions. But the NBA has successfully, the NBA media has successfully transformed the casual mind to saying, well, if you ain't played a sport, then you can't talk about it. Like,
I think for me, I like former players being on these platforms if they're experts at communicating. So Ryan Clark, for example, I think he got a degree at communications. So he understands how to communicate his point in a way that'll come out insightful and just how you're supposed to when you're on these television platforms. A lot of these former players don't have that learning experience. They don't have that degree of knowledge like a Ryan Clark. So I think with these networks, yes, obviously former players they played,
you know what
but
else it is?
I think they need some. I think they need to have more requirements in order to come on these networks. In my opinion,
You know what else it is?
what is it?
None of these players, these former players that get on these ESPNs, they aren't willing to teach. They aren't
No,
willing
they
to
aren't.
teach the game to the audience. At least on NFL Live, Dan Orlovsky, terrible takes aside, he will at least try to teach you something, right? He'll teach you what coverage is. You as a quarterback, what coverages he may be looking at, all that film breakdowns. Ryan Clark do the same thing. Swagoo, they will at least try to teach the audience the game. They don't do any of that in the NBA.
Nope. Nope,
And
they
you would
don't.
think a platform like Inside the NBA would try to like pioneer or be the forefront in that department, and they don't. They don't even.
Nope.
It's like they don't even watch the games.
It's entertainment television. That is
Yeah,
not an insightful. No, it's not. The only guy that tries is Kenny, and he's fallen off in that department in recent years. But yeah, man. If I'm like after game one, I don't want to see the Morse twins. I want to see Jay Williams. I want to see Tim Legler. Like those are the two people you're supposed to bring in. Those two people because they're the ones that actually break down the game, tell you what exactly happened, different coverages. This is the problem. This is the problem that's
and this
existing
is
and
why,
why the NBA ratings is going down.
and this is why, fan made podcasts and platforms blowing these national TV as far as content wise. They're blowing them out of the water.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
because
why the
they're
the
actually
local radio is better. Is better if you want to actually learn about the game. Local, like it's ridiculous. I don't understand.
and even to a certain extent, like radio on Sirius XM, like for instance, NBA radio, they have guys Brian Scalabrine or former players that actually talk about the game and not just bring up like these old narratives, like they actually break down the game. And I love that. And then they have journalists that actually bring up some good points as well. When you look at the national media, it's just not the case anymore when it comes to NBA. When you watch ESPN, it's night and day the coverage of football and then the coverage of the NBA. Like it's just night and day the difference. There's more detail when it comes to football, while with NBA, it seems like a lot more lazy coverage, reporting, and that's just unfortunate.
And,
And
and
that's
you
why the
know what?
ratings are
And
down.
you know what I also think?
What? What's up?
I believe that I can't confirm nor deny this. I believe the NFL is much stricter on how you can cover their game. You get these media rights, you get this license to play, I'll get fine. But you're gonna talk about the game in the manner that's gonna uplift it and not diminish the product. Obviously, you're gonna have your knuckleheads that's gonna say off the wall stuff every now and then, but it's like it's a few of them, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's widespread in the NBA. The NBA needs to be like, listen, we're not allowing certain stuff to be talked about on our game like this. I ain't saying censorship, but you gotta give them motive encouragement to like talk about the game in a positive light because it's ridiculous. Always some drama, negativity on the forefront of these national media channels and platforms every time. Like they was
Yeah.
talking about like Dorsberg bringing up the ref bait and stuff. Like, come on, why are
Yeah.
we
Foul baby.
parroting NBA Twitter garbage on national television in the middle of a freaking conference finals? Like
Right.
let's
Right.
cut it out. Foul merchant. That should come out of any commentator's mouth.
Right, and she's supposed to be insightful. I will say this:
And that's why her job is in danger next year.
Adam Silver has come out and addressed a lot of that stuff. He has condemned a lot of the chatter involving NBA coverage. He said is a lot of times he'll hear some things and he just doesn't like it at all. And he's talked about how like he doesn't like he said he understands like the frustration, but he ultimately can't control necessarily what they're saying. But I do think Adam Silver has to at least let these people know, like Stephen A, First Take, all these people know, like, hey, can you like be more insightful in your coverage in a lot of your takes and stop using these lazy old narratives? I think if he was more just demanding of better coverage from these platforms, I believe they would do their job better. And ultimately, with Adam Silver, we have to blame him as well at this. He's at fault for this as well because Rob Manfred, I think he's the
MLB owner,
commissioner of the
commissioner.
MLB. He
terrible.
went out of his way and he said, "Nah, ESPN, you don't deserve the rights for the MLB." And he went to a completely different network. Salute to him because ESPN didn't do a great job in covering the MLB.
Nope.
So I think with Adam Silver, it's unfortunate because they already signed a deal, and ESPN under Disney, they're gonna have the most money. But I guess it's gonna be a while. But whenever they have the next bargaining for networks for coverage, he has to figure out a way to demand better coverage for his sport. And if that network doesn't agree with anything that he says that he wants, then go to a different network. I think that should be on the table because these networks, ESPN, finally we got rid of TNT, but ESPN has gotten away with so much foolishness over the years. And now it's the time for Adam Silver to put his foot down and effectively say, you can't do this anymore. You can't exploit us anymore. So it's up to Adam Silver. He needs to be
And
more
also, like,
demanding.
I feel like, honestly, if I'm Adam Silver, I'm handpicking the commentary team. I'm gonna be honest. Like, you're
I
not about
don't
to
think he
put.
has that control.
I, I don't. I feel like.
That's
I
the
feel like they
problem. It's
do.
all it's
I
on
feel
the
like they
networks. It's
still
on the
do.
networks for them to
So,
pick
the
the
question
commentary
is
team.
Iron Eagle on ESPN?
Nah, I think he's
No,
on.
he's not.
I think he's on NBC. I think he'll
Okay.
be. I think he might be on NBC. Like the NBC, I believe is going to be great. I think NBC is going to
Yeah,
be great.
NBC is
It's
gonna be. I
just
think it's gonna be
the
fire.
problem is that ESPN owns the rights for the NBA Finals, and that's going to hurt so much. That just it hurts. It's going to hurt no matter what. Like even though NBC is coming in, they'll do their thing. I think they'll have NBA All Star. ESPN still owns the rights for NBA Finals, and that is what hurting them.
Shoot, I put Tim Legler on the main commentary team. He
People
knows what
people
he's
been
talking
saying
about.
that. People
Yeah.
people been saying
No way
put
he
Tim
should be
Legler
only
on
be
there.
on the alternate broadcast. That's crazy. He needs to be on the main broadcast because
I
that
agree.
commentary team game one, not it.
I agree. I
Like
think
they made Mike Breen look washed. I'm like,
you
oh Lord.
you know who I would have as the commentators. I would have obviously Mike Breen got to stay. He's the GOAT.
Yeah.
I would have Stan Van Gundy and Tim Legler. That would be my group.
That's solid. That's
I would
solid.
hire Stan Van Gundy. Obviously, his brother Jeff, he got released, but I would figure out a way to get Stan up in there because he's a phenomenal commentator. He's a phenomenal commentator on TNT. So you have your former coach, you have your former player, both of them very insightful, both of them not about narratives, and I would run that team. I think they would be great. He was great with Kevin Harlan in certain stunts as well. So I like that group. That's just me.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know what ESPN is going to do. But ultimately, they got to do a lot better because it has been garbage.